dad was very much farm safety conscious, but in the back of our barn on a pile of timber was his childhood treasure, which was a 1947 Whizzer motorbike that he had bought brand new in 1947 as a junior in high school.
Wow.
And I remember as a kid sitting on that thing and kind of dreaming about it, but motorcycles are too dangerous, right? But of all the things that he did, he left high school and joined the Navy and went all around the world and came back, started his farming operation in 1960, and that bike made it to his new farm property, and it sat there for a while, and roughly 2008, 2009, he gifted it to me and said, let's make this right. At the end of the day, we're just regular guys that have this same common affliction with these two-wheel machines, and we want to share it with people.
Restoring your dad's old motorcycle, then sharing it with the world? Oh, it just reminds me of all the positive things going on in the world, even though it doesn't appear that way a lot of the time. There's a lot of good people out there with a passion for motorcycles and a passion for life. That was Paul Kraus, by the way, and you're about to hear the whole story. A wonderful story. But first, may I just review and level set with you for a minute? So what's so special about motorcycling? Well, certainly it's the freedom that we feel when we're out on the road, the places we go, the people we meet, the experience of reconnecting with Mother Nature. But what makes our experience different than, say, running or bicycling? Well, the difference is the machine. For many of us, our bike is a work of art. It's a visual and physical expression of ourselves, maybe. There are those among our motorcycling community who not only acquire and have the skills to restore beautiful works of art of the past, but who also love to share their passion with their whole community, with the whole world. And when that sharing happens, new friendships are formed. And my friends, that's community. And that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. So today, I'm excited to introduce you all to my new friend here in Northern Colorado, Paul Kraus of the Vintage Motorcycle Group. And you'll be hearing this wonderful story of Paul's connection with his dad through this very special motorcycle. So sit back, relax, and let's take a trip to the past, experiencing beautiful motorcycles from what I would call a more simple time. So I think it's a good time to go back. Stay tuned. Recorded in beautiful Loveland, Colorado. Welcome to Peace, Love, Moto, the podcast for motorcyclists seeking that peaceful, easy feeling as we cruise through this life together. Are you ready? Let's go. Here on the Peace, Love, Moto podcast, we're all about community, among a lot of different things. And I got to admit, I'm kicking myself in the head because I'm just now meeting a gentleman who lives not far from here and who does some amazing things with motorcycles, specifically with vintage bikes that are just the coolest thing ever. We talk about on this podcast all the time about we love riding our bikes. We love getting out. But there's something, too, about the bike itself. There's a personality about it that oftentimes matches our own one way or the other. And so that being said, I'm so excited today to have roughly my neighbor down a few cities down from me, to the south, Paul Kraus. And Paul is associated with the Colorado Vintage Motorcycling Group. And we connected through Instagram and started chatting a little bit. And before we actually started recording here, we've got a lot in common. So I just am so excited to introduce everybody to Paul Kraus. So thank you for joining, Paul.
Thanks for having me, Ron. This is my pleasure to join, and it's great to meet you virtually now, and very soon, hopefully in person. And it's the beginning of a great friendship.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Well, we've got the Colorado thing certainly Certainly in common there, but let's talk of this thread we clearly have together about motorcycling. So, if you don't mind, describe how did you get into motorcycling?
Yeah, you got it. You got it. I'm a bit of a late bloomer, to be honest. I grew up on a farm in Kansas. We had three wheelers, ATC 90s, and a 185S Honda three wheeler. That was Dad's, but I found my way into a sand pit doing figure eights and whatnot. But um, you know, we weren't allowed to have motorcycles. Dad was very much farm safety conscious, but in the back of our barn on a pile of timber was his childhood treasure, which was a 1947 Whizzer motorbike that he had bought brand new in 1947 as a junior in high school.
Wow.
And I remember as a kid sitting on that thing and kind of dreaming about it, but motorcycles are too dangerous, right? But of all the things that he did, he left high school and joined the Navy and went all around the world and came back, started his farming operation in 1960, and that bike made it to his new farm property, and it sat there for a while. And roughly 2008, 2009, he gifted it to me and said, let's make this right, and let's get this thing running again. So I spent a lot of time doing research, started a family of my own at the time, and so that kind of extended the project a bit, but it allowed me to do the project right. And I now am in possession and gladly share this bike with other people. It's a Schwinn bicycle frame, balloon tire frame with
Oh,
a kit motor on it that with the Whizzer Corporation started in the late 30s and had worked with Congress to stay open during World War II uh, as something that is an economical way to travel to work stateside. And it was very much one of the more popular motorized pedal bicycle motorcycle kits available, and we just happened to have it. And over the years, as we kind of go through Dad's belongings and things, I have the Kansas title still, the registration that was matching the license plate, which we still have, the owner's manual, and more recently, before he passed away, we found the bill of sale for both the kit engine and the bicycle frame with serial numbers on it. I cried that day. That was that Christmas before he passed away, and it was tears of joy. It was absolutely phenomenal. And
that's
but
priceless.
this last year, this is the dorkiest thing is we were going through more things, and it was kind of junk drawer and stuff. And I found this Yale lock key, and it had a leather band around it. And you can find it on my personal Instagram page, but it was for the Schwinn bicycle steering column lock, which I have a key for already, but this is unused. So it still has it's NOS completely. And it's like all these the only thing we don't have is a picture of him as a kid and his bike.
Yeah, yeah.
So that, long story short, and I have long stories. I'm from Kansas. I've been told that they go on and on. But
That's what we're here for, man.
I this might be a two-parter. I That's where it started, and I enjoyed showing it. And then I met Bob with the Colorado Vintage Motorcycle Show. Back then, it was called Motorcycles Reborn, held at Heritage Square in Golden, and we've become fast friends. Turns out he's also my neighbor about 2 miles away, and he's big into Japanese and European bikes, but that doesn't discriminate. We all it is like, how do we bring these great machines together, not only to show them off, but to build our friendships. And I've met some really strong friendships through here, through our show. And it's a part of it is that building community, but it's also networking. You might have somebody who knows BSAs better. Oh, I found a BSA in a garage. What should I know about a 1968 BSA Lightning? Like what's correct, what's been replaced. And I have a network to do that with, right? Bob actually just texted me that there's a gentleman wanting to sell his father's 94-year-old father's Moto Guzzi. And I don't know how old it is. I don't know anything about the bike, but he said, should we put it on our Facebook group? I'm like, Yes, we should, because we're here to help people like that do their thing. I just don't want to deal with spammers. So
Right.
it's it's we don't do it for a business. It's really our hobby, and it's an extension of our hobby that's treated us really well, and it gives us it's that light that gives us that little pep in our step, where we look forward to the next thing. We look forward to the next show or the next maybe coffee meetup or bike night around town type of thing. And it just these bikes do so much for us, and they might give us hassles because the carburetor, the jets need cleaned out or timing is off or valves need lashed, but that's all problem solving. If that's all I'm dealing with at the end of the day, something that's fixable, I'm still winning.
Yeah. You said a couple of things that I'm thinking about. One of them is the beauty of having this object that's associated with your dad.
Yeah, it's pretty
Minus the
special.
picture, like you said, but just having that item it's writable, then I suppose.
Oh yeah, I and in fact, May 6th is the anniversary of the purchase, and I call it Whizzer Day. It's on our family calendar, and I broadcast it to the world. And if the weather is right in May, then I pull it out and dust it off, and we go for a ride. That's not the only time I ride it. That these weren't meant to be just looked at as like a trophy. It has paint chips in it again after we repainted it and did all that, but it's meant to be enjoyed. So,
I feel where you're coming from. And the other thing well, along that path of the connection with your dad, in my garage, I have my dad's older brother's 1926 Ford Model T.
oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's a coupe. It's wonderful. Now, if I'm way too busy with my day job where I have to make a living to get back into it again, but it's not currently running, but it was running for quite a long time. I think I just let things get gummed up a little bit. But that I feel is a connection to the Francis side of my family too, that old Ford Model T. My uncle had passed away, and my cousin, his daughter, we were all having breakfast together. I was with my mom and dad, and with my cousin and her husband. We were all just talking about my Uncle Melvin. And the short story is, it came up. She said, "Well, we're going to need to sell it." And I said, "You're looking at the buyer." Then I said, "Oh, by the way, how much?" Then I had to call my wife and make sure that was going to be okay. But it is in the garage. But I feel that same tie, I think.
That's so good. Yeah, it just you have that connection to the past. It's very rare to have that in the family for well over 75 years for in our case at this point. And I always hear about the ones that got away. I mean, I had a 55 Chevy pickup in high school that was my first project. I sold it for a 94 Ford Ranger because it had power steering. I was dumb, but I have all, the ones that get away, they teach us a lesson. But the ones that we have now, we've collected it. We take good care of it. It's in our family estate planning. That Whizzer, believe it or not, of all the stuff that we collect in life, that one has a special spot that's going to be well taken care of if something happens to me down the road.
That's wonderful. The other thing that you mentioned is community. Um, this whole podcast is based on a couple things. I repeat this all the time. Maybe I'm just trying to remind myself. Peace of mind. So that's, we get that from riding motorcycles, so many of us. And then the love part is learning to love other people. And that I think a lot of that has to do with community, this natural community that we have as motorcycle riders, because we're a little bit of oddballs, right? We go out and do things that'll kill us, out on these bikes. But there's this joy factor that comes along with it. And then there's the community piece as well. Just like you said, in my own experience, again, with the Model T, when I first got it, it wasn't running at all. But my cousin, she told me, "You've got to connect with the local Model T club," which I did. And lo and behold, all these guys are showing up at my house, helping me get this Model T going again. So really
It,
felt the community as well.
it might be the Whizzer motorbike, the dorkiness of that. And I say that affectionately because my wife has created the hashtag adorkable, but it's it's the contrast to what Pee Wee Herman said. I'm a loner, Dottie, a rebel. Yet throughout that entire movie, he builds friends across the country,
Oh,
of
yeah.
all shapes, sizes, and colors. And that's what these motorcycles have done. You just have to seek and find them. And that's why you and I are sitting here. That's why Bob and I are good friends. And all the dozens and dozens of other connections that we've had over the years that have it draws us together and it show me a person looking at a bike, even if it's giving them frustration, and they're still going to smile. They might have, you might throw a wrench or or a wrench has been thrown at you. It's gonna it once you crack the nut, you smile again. You're like, I got it, we got it. It's almost like that bike has you know been personified, and now the two of you can go for a ride after you've figure out the shakedown run and get all the items sorted out. It becomes a very great relationship between the two of you. But then the larger group, now you can go meet up and share with other people, and everybody has their own unique story. But like you and I said, we each have our own path, but look at all the parallels that our journey has given us in work life and in bike life, you name it. We there's something to talk about that we'd have in common.
Oh, most definitely. And we were, for the folks who are listening, we had a little conversation before we started recording too, and got a little bit personal there that I didn't record. But one of the things that I shared and that Paul and I have in common is that this is a stress reliever for us. Getting
Definitely.
out on the bike is just a little wind time makes a big difference. And really, really, really grateful for that.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter what you ride. And I've been fortunate. I've got a small collection of things, and it might be my '69 Honda CT90 with a basket on the back, and I'll go down to Walgreens or just take some back roads around here and spend 2 hours doing the fastest 35 mile an hour you've ever been on. Or, take the bigger bike, a CB400, and go cruise a little farther, a little bit more wind, a little bit more torque. It's all firing those same neurons, but you're aware of your surroundings, you're contemplating your life and the things that are around you and what matters the most. And it 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 serves so much that when you come home, you take a deep breath and you are at peace again. It's that piece, that first piece, right? And
Yeah.
you mission accomplished. You that it's a little bit of medicine that you can get on two wheels. So
Yeah. Among many things too, kind of still going down that path is it's something that I don't know if I'll be able to wrap my head around with electric motorcycles because I so appreciate the engineering that went into the bikes that I've owned in the past and the bikes that I ride today. Just knowing that, yeah, there was some deep thought putting this together. And then this whole chemistry, the geometry, all the science that goes in to everything having to work pretty much perfectly in order to start and to get me going down the road. I think about that. I think maybe another example. So in the garage, I have a Triumph Bonneville T120. It's a new one, newish. But
solid bike.
oh, it is. What I among many things that I love about that bike is you take off the seat, and at the base of the gas tank are the initials of the painter of that tank. Ah,
Uh,
I love that. I love that. Like KC is written there, and I wonder who KC is. But
yeah.
it's in England, who you know put a whole lot of thought and experience into painting those pinstripes just perfectly, and then signed his or her name. I love that.
I've battled with the electric versus petrol bike and the whole thing that we're in right now. And it's the movement that's happening. You and I are not going to stop it separately or together. So I'm going to embrace it in a way that I can appreciate. At least somebody's out there. And fun story, this fall, picked up my son from middle school. He's an eighth grader. And we're pulling through Old Town Erie, which is, an old mining town from the 1870s. And going down the street was a kid on an electric dirt bike. He rides it to middle school. One, think about that. It's 2024 and kids are still riding motorized bikes to school, which I think is still pretty cool.
Right.
Uh, Second, this kid's going home. Now, keep in mind, there's the law-abiding Paul Kraus, and then there's the appreciative inner child of me. This kid's doing a 4 block wheelie on his electric motorbike. Beautiful afternoon, and my son knows him. The kid's on the football team, and he's just holding it so steady. He's not chasing squirrels. It's studied. It's really well. And here comes a rider on a Harley, gives the kid the two down. But I saw the smile on that guy's face that was beautiful. But I mean, it's a 20-mile-an-hour zone. It's the kid was not being reckless. He's actually, I would be a worse offender at doing a wheelie down this street on any bike, but he was on this electric bike, perfect torque for it. He has control, more throttle control than maybe some carbureted pieces could do. And I'm like, okay, so this is our next generation, right? And so, and I'm going to pull back to the show a couple times, so pardon me, but
Ah,
like we try not to discriminate on anything other than age. And if as long as your bike is 25 years or older, which hurts this year because that's the year 2000 and I was out of college at that point,
ah,
uh, that it's a wake up call.
right.
But you know, the Antique Automobile Club of America has the same kind of that you have to draw a line somewhere. And that's kind of what we held to. And people do pretty good. But we get these great bikes from the 80s and 90s that guys are just champing at the bit to show off. Because they're low mileage or they're in, really good condition still and or they've had journeys and but as long as it's that old, age, displacement, whatever, we're just trying to bring community. And a lot of times these bike shows can be, for old men. But no, there's a whole crop of middle-aged folk. Maybe I can call myself middle-age or upper middle age. Labels are hard, but we're starting to see, a younger generation of kids in their 20s and maybe early 30s that just picked up their first bike. Well, are we opening the door or are we blocking them out? And, what are they seeking? Oh, that's exactly what we were seeking back when we started, a
Yeah.
community of some sort. So how do we embrace that? And we've had everything from Honda Sprees, if you remember those little scooters. They're little either 50 or 70 cc bikes, maybe. I don't know much about them, but we had a matching pair a couple of years ago. We've had Honda's Z50 monkeys and
Oh,
little bikes, and then you get the 1916 Indian from a couple of years ago, and it was not in rideable condition, but the gentleman started it, if you asked, just so he could demonstrate and hear the thing, purr again. It was beautiful. The Rocky Mountain Vintage Motocross Club, they show up and bring a display of really great dirt bikes from the 80s. And it you can tell from my voice, I get excited because we didn't force them to come. We don't charge an admission. We don't give out prizes for this. It's called a show. It's more of a display, but you know what? People still show up, and every year there's something new because somebody's got a new project that they're itching to get out of the garage after a winter project, and they just finished it, and that this is the beginning of the riding season when we host the show, and it's always interesting. I'll get to the parking lot at 6:30 and there's like 5 guys there and we tell them it starts at 8.
oh, I've seen that too. At our church, every year we do it's called Carnival on the Corner. It's a fundraiser or just kind of a carnival, I guess, for the community to bring everybody in. And we have a car show element of that too. Same thing. Any number of times when I've been there, or even for other little car show events or whatever, an hour and a half early is not early.
Yeah.
They'll
Yeah.
still showing up.
That just shows we're doing something right.
That's right.
That there is a hole, we started to fill it and people are embracing it. So we don't get mad. We're just like it's a good smiling effort to get all set up, and they get the prime choice of whatever real estate in the parking lot that they want, and
Yeah.
we're off to the races.
And they're sitting in their lawn chairs all day long and they're just fine.
It's one of the greatest chatter noise levels. It's just this nice rumble of laughter and talking and a handful of startups because somebody wants to hear that Winkle Suzuki, fire up, which is a whole other sound than you've ever heard before. Or the Kawasaki triple that rolls in, and it's funny when you hear the unique bike pull in, and people are kind of coming and going throughout the day, but when you have something special when most of the crowd turns to look at the thing roll in, and they just follow it just the entire way. That's where I get my joy. Like I'm a people watcher at heart, so to get to do all this, that watching people enjoy these bikes, and that's proof positive of we're doing something on the right scale.
You mentioned the little kid, what was a middle schooler riding a
Yeah.
wheel.
Yeah.
Did you see the movie, the Bruce Brown film On Any Sunday?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that reminds me of a scene there too. There's a kid, I think, on a Honda Monkey, or I don't know if they called it that at the time, but so he's riding a wheelie on that little 50cc bike, and as it turns out, oh, I wish I knew the name, but he turns out to be a pro motorcycle racer after that. He's probably 8 years old,
That's so good.
and just
That's
riding a wheelie along. Yeah. But kind of speaking of that, this conversation makes me think of that old Bruce Brown film in '72. If for those listening who have not seen it, you can find it out there. As far as going back in time and learning a love for motorcycling, you watch that film and you'll get both. So that's the film that hooked me in. So I believe that I was 10 when that came out, 10 or 11. My mother, and I think I've shared this maybe on an episode of the podcast, but my mother took my friend and I, Jimmy, and dropped us off at the theater in the middle of the day to go see
no kidding.
On Any Sunday. And I came out of that and I was sold. And I was just, after that point, I was just begging my parents to get me something with a motor on it. I was that kid too, riding my Schwinn Stingray literally around the block, around this neighborhood. I would ride at least a quarter of a mile, including turns and everything on one wheel, just riding it along there. So I was that kid just biting at the chip, or what do you call it? Just raring to go to
Yeah.
for a motorized journey. And then it's taken me 55 years or whatever it is now. It's just taken me all this time.
And that's what the Whizzer has done to tell stories is I'll have, what would typically be seen as kind of the burly biker, right? And he'll come up to the bike, and I'm not gonna, mince word. I did a great job. I love this bike. I'm so proud of the how it turned out. But you get these guys come up and they'll say I had one or I wanted one or my neighbor had one. But I've had gentlemen come up in their cuts and they're like, this is where it started. And they'll they go from two wheels and pedals, and then the kit motor, if they were fortunate enough to cobble something together that gives them just a little bit more freedom to explore, and then they graduate up. But I've seen sometimes I just kind of step back. I don't even engage them because I just want them. They're taking it all in. There's something deep there, and I've told this story a bunch of times, but I had a gentleman. He was fairly heavy set in a wheelchair, being pushed by his son-in-law, and at a car show. And I saw him across the parking lot, and he said, "Oh, Whizzer, let's go over here." And so they came over, and I was standing back, and he was talking to his son-in-law about the compression release and how to start it, and it's a little bit of a death trap, but 12-year-old kids then are way they were more adult than our 12-year-olds are now.
Right.
I'm cut to the chase. But
Yeah.
he said, I left two of them in Topeka when we moved to Colorado. He left two of them in the garage, and I get goosebumps every time I hear that because, he just up and left. I mean, it wasn't in the cards to bring him. So I leaned in and I just asked him. I said, we started talking about it. I said, well, would you like me to start it? And it was probably a 95-degree day, so that engine was everything in there was primed and ready. And typically on a Whizzer, the compression release when you pull that, it stops the engine. So it helps with your starting with the pedal. Then you engage it, and then that fires things up. And I was able to do it standing off to the side because everything was pretty viscous, and I just kicked those pedals and it fired right up. And that gentleman grabbed the arms on his wheelchair, and he just almost lifted up and left it
Oh,
because that sound, that single cylinder sound, is just you could just see the memory washing across his face. And that's why we do this. That's why it's not for me to show off. In fact, there's a handful of trophies in the garage, and I appreciate those, but those moments of helping somebody retell their childhood story or their wishes or their passion in some way. Now I'll get the guy who's like, the bicycle purist. We live in Boulder County, right? So you get these guys like, I don't understand why you put a motor on a bicycle. That's like context is everything. But uh, humor them, that's fine. Everybody's entitled that way. But just those handful of people who you really reach through the thing that you help bring back to life makes it all the worth it.
oh, absolutely. Well, the other thing I discovered we have in common when we first started talking is that we live in a very hurting world.
We
There's
do.
there's guys our age shooting themselves, and that's just the reality. There's a lot of bad things. There's a lot of depression, a lot of sadness out there. If we can do one thing that share with other people this joy that we experience through motorcycling, whether it's vintage or travel or adventure riding or motocross or whatever. And if we can just share a smile with somebody and say, you know what, I really like something like this. You want to have a look? And next thing you know, they may be the kind of person that comes along and says, I think I've been looking for this all my life.
Yeah.
Maybe this is what I need. And that's what I was sharing a little bit too, is my hope for the podcast. All that I'm doing is just talking about what a wonderful, fortunate life I've had because dad gave in when I was a little kid. And somehow mom gave in too and let me get a bike. And it's been part of my life ever since. And it's been wonderful. It helps me get through the end of a stressful day, or being able to go out on a multi-day ride or whatever just kind of resets my brain, resets my heart in a lot of ways, because I meet strangers out on the road too that do the same thing. At you know how this is more so than I would on the kind of bikes that you ride, but you pull up to a gas station and start filling up. Next thing you know, you got a crowd.
Yeah.
Instant conversation, and that's not going to happen when two people pull up on their Prius.
I've hauled bikes on a trailer back to my hometown in Kansas, and one of them was to take the Whizzer back to where it was purchased. The hometown car show, big benefit for the community there, and I rode it down Main Street for the first time in over 70 years, and took a picture of it in front of the shop that was an upholstery shop that the guy also sold these kit engines out of, and I pulled it up on the sidewalk, and I've got pictures of that. But it just to, to get there, you're going down I-70, you stop in Lyman or you stop in Burlington, and here's an open trailer of I've got a handful of old bikes that I gladly am able to take with me and share. And it's a 20-minute gas stop, and that's before I even get to go inside and get a iced tea and use the facilities. It's one of those things. But my family, they've come to enjoy it and tolerate it maybe. And
Oh, I was going to ask you, how is the family support with this hobby of yours?
I was ambitious in the beginning, and I had to kind of throttle that, given family life and other priorities type of thing. But the family loves it. My wife said you could have any project as long as she could still park her car on one half the garage.
The same thing. When my
And
wife hears this, she's
there,
gonna say, "Oh yeah."
this, I thought this was a circle of trust. We're not letting other people do this. No, I have a number of projects. I've got, bike stand, but I have a Tetris of how I can put the bikes in, and it's not a big garage, but I can move things around. So if I'm doing repairs, and a buddy can come over and we're wrenching and doing different things, and I can put it all back and our car still fits back in there, and everybody's happy. But they do support it. And I am very careful with where do I want to take it to a show, or is there a day ride, and we plan it ahead. We just make sure everybody's schedules are on par, and we've got good communication, and that's key. And now my son's 14, and we started him with during the pandemic, we had a mini bike that we did a Predator 212 swap on out of Harbor Freight, and threw a torque converter on it, and that was a little too much for a 12-year-old at the time. But we'd take it to the farm in the summertime, and he had a straight pipe header, and you could hear him every corner of the farm that he was on. And you want to talk about mental health, that sound went away, and I thought, oh, did he crash? And I looked way down the driveway, and there he was pushing it back. And we forgot to bring him gloves that trip. He had his helmet, didn't have gloves, so he was blistered up both sides. He ran out of gas. And they always say, there's a friend of mine, Motorcycle Rewind on Instagram and YouTube. He says, don't drive it any further than you want to push it back. And, but Henry ran out of gas, but he was pushing it back to refill. But was there a frown on his face? Was he mad? No. But you could hear that straight pipe header all over the farm, and he could putz around. Well, he's outgrown it, and we sold it this summer, and but we've been practicing up on this Trail 90 of ours, and I've got a little CB 100 that I got a year ago out of a garage, and got it up, raring to go again. It's a little 1971 bike,
Yes.
and it perfect intro bikes for young individuals. And my daughter's a little skittish. I have a 76 Yamaha Trials bike that we take to the farm, and that one, it's a little bit more intimidating, the two-stroke, but it's geared right. It just there's a confidence level, a little hump you got to get over, and if it's not her calling now, maybe it will be later, but I'm not going to force it. But the boy definitely has caught the bug.
Oh, I can relate. You mentioned the CB 100, a
Yeah.
1971. I'm trying to think. I had the CL 100,
Oh,
and
no
I
kidding.
think it was a 71 also, if I'm not
Oh,
mistaken.
yeah.
That's the bike that I graduated up to from going through a number of little bikes. Had a Honda XL70. Forget what year model that one was. Maybe a 75, something like that. Or no, it would have been, I'm trying to think of my age. So I graduated high school in 1980, got to do the math and everything. So it might have been in 1970, something like that. And then when I was going to turn 15, on my 15th birthday, I went to get my endorsement to be able to ride a bike less than 100 cc's. So I got the CL 100 from a guy that my dad had worked with, and it was blue. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, the distinction between the CB and the CL maybe is the CL was more street oriented.
Well, the CB has the lower pipes, and I've always
Okay,
been told
mine
that's
had
a
an
city
upper.
bike, whereas a CL is a little bit more scrambler-esque, with a
Yeah.
higher pipe.
Yes, it did have the higher pipe. Yeah, yeah, and it was blue. Yeah, I'll have to find a picture
Yeah.
somewhere.
I'll send you. uh I've got lots of pictures. We all do, right? And it's it's a lot of fun to get them out there and show them off. But yeah, I just sent you a picture of the CB 100 this fall on a
Okay. Is it
super
on your
fun.
Instagram also? Because I
Yeah,
think maybe I saw.
so on the Motorcycle Show Instagram, under the profile, you can find links to my personal Instagram, which is open. You can see all that stuff.
Yeah.
So it's just all my ridiculous time wasters that I call hobbies and appreciations.
I jokingly say, and it drives my wife completely crazy, and she'll hate that I'm saying this on the podcast too. But I'll go ahead and say this, guys. I think it's funny. So I tell even my buddies at church, I said, you know what? I've got two choices in life. I can either go out to the bars every night and talk to strange women, or I can hop on my motorcycle and go for a ride. I choose to do the better thing for our marriage, and I go for a ride on my motorcycle almost
There
every
you
day,
are.
just for her. I do it for her.
And
Because
then you
going the other way would get me
and
killed.
then strange people talk to you at the gas station.
That's right. Or strange people.
I'm kidding. Oh, it's good. And this CB100 had 800 miles on it.
Oh, wow.
It hadn't been run. It had some paint scars from being moved around in a garage and had no title. So I each bike presents me with a new challenge. This one I went through the Colorado state of Colorado title uh, process to you have to make it roadworthy, get a state inspection, then you have to send a certified letter, or hopefully all that gets you an address to send a certified letter to the last known title holder that you have it in your possession and all that. That never appeared, so it actually went way more smoothly than I anticipated. But each project bike has its own challenges. It might be a carburetor; it's always a thing, but I'm getting pretty good at that. And it might be changing your first tire and tube, and those are the fun research projects. And of course, we got YouTube, but you get a climber's manual. Hopefully, you can get an original Honda manual or shop manual for these bikes. And um, I love learning that. I mean, it's you have your day job, but and you can learn there, but these are also firing those neurons that give you that little pep. Just like going out for a ride, you might be stuck in a garage. It's 45 degrees because it's the middle of January, but you're having fun.
Well, there's something special too about working with your hands. Right out of high school, I worked with my dad at the machine shop and got pretty handy with the screwdriver and stuff. Then after that, I got into the computer industry, and it's all been vaporware ever since, poking on a keyboard all day long. I even joke with my team at work sometimes, just those of my team who are old enough to remember the Jetsons. I'll say, George, the running gag on the Jetsons was George Jetson would come home from work and he would complain to his wife that he had to push the button all day. Well, that's what we do all the time. We just push the button. We're just pushing the button. But getting out, whether I'm working on the bike or back when I was working on the Model T, I remember one evening, my wife comes out to the garage and she said, "When are you coming to bed? It's 11 o'clock." And I was up underneath it. I was up underneath the Model T having a great time, like on a Wednesday night, and
Yeah.
had to work the next day.
Yeah. And you probably got a great night's sleep too.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's beautiful.
I sit in front of this glass screen all day as well. And there's something about putting that aside from like maybe a quick YouTube video or whatever, instructional video. Certified YouTube mechanic is the joke around here at this point. But to get out there and problem solve, and we had our I had my childhood of old vehicles and naturally aspirated vehicles, and a lot of the same things apply now. My brother, a handful of my brothers are a phone call away if I have an ignition problem or something else mechanical that I just can't quite visualize yet. And
Yeah.
but they're older. They've had that experience, and I can share that with them. And or call a friend. And I've got a good friend that comes down from Longmont, and we tinker. And it's that afternoon goes by in a breeze, but I'm happy at the end of the day because I got to hang out with my buddy, listen to some old Hank Williams on the Bluetooth speaker, and wrench, and we yell at each other and laugh at each other, and it's good fun.
Oh, it is. It is. Hey, I don't want to forget to tell me and the audience about your show. It's in June, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's
So
talk about that.
we typically have it the first or second weekend in June. I'm still finalizing the date for the event, but it's held in Old Town Erie in a it's an old church parking lot, like old 1888 style building. Our show it's well attended and continues to grow since the pandemic. As we've grown, we've kind of settled it here. We're blocks away from a handful of really good restaurants and coffee shops. So it makes it a little bit more enjoyable to have those services there. Um, we open it up to a handful of vendors that are motorcycle related in some way. We don't we're not trying to create a craft fair or a swap meet that's
Mhm.
one that puts more work on us. I don't want to have to work the show. I want to walk around and talk to my friends and meet new friends, and that's really not the point. But we have a really good attendance with the AMCA. The Flatiron chapter comes down and puts on a nice display as well. And then you get some of these guys coming out of the woodwork. There a couple of years ago, was a 1910 Wagner, which is a pedal motorcycle. And believe it or not, Mike Wolf just recently acquired the bike.
Oh,
And
man, that is
so
a
now,
purple bike.
and so I've been in connection with him, and I shared him photos that we had from our show. And I said, "Is this the same bike?" He said, "Yes, this came out of Denver." And just making those fun connections. Like you never know, we're all the same. There might be a star in the world, but at the end of the day, we're just regular guys that have this same common affliction with these two-wheel machines, and we want to share it with people. So it. But the bike show itself, it usually runs about 8 o'clock till about 2 p.m. There's only a few stragglers by two. A lot of people cut out, um, and it's a first come first serve. Find your spot, hop off, walk around, enjoy the day. A good friend of ours out of Golden has a neat old Harley with a sidecar, and he's got a he owns coffee roasting business. So he sets up and has free cups of coffee for everybody. And this year, I'm working. Hopefully, we will have a tintype photographer,
Oh, cool.
and that will be, we'll help her out and promote her. But you'll be able to sign up and pay her directly. I don't want, it's all for her.
Yeah.
Last year we had a street artist, a gentleman named Paul Heaston, who's a sketcher, and you can find this on our Instagram page as well. I've been following him for years because I'm a art kid and designer and appreciator of what he's done. He's based out of Denver, but he contacted me, said, "I'd like to come up for your show," and he showed up and he sketched one of the attending bikes, which was a mid '50s BMW, and ended up selling the sketch to the owner and taking a handful of commissions from other people in the crowd. I don't know how many or who, but we're supporting the community in ways related to bikes, but not directly in such a way that was stereotypical. And that warms my heart that we can create that avenue for that to happen. And there's a handful of upholsterers that have come through and set up a tent, and you can get their information, and they have examples of their wares. Um, Independent motorcycle shops are a big deal for us. The people that want to hang up their shingle and get their name out there. This is for them, and they'll bring out a handful of bikes that they're proud of that kind of draw people in, and you can't get any better than that because it's the best of the best out here. But more importantly, I think we talked a little bit about this. Bob actually introduced me to the Morgan Adams Foundation, and which is a pediatric cancer research and education outfit out of Denver, and they've done a lot for the Front Range and Colorado community for families afflicted, with children that are battling this uphill battle of kids cancer. And they have a big concours at the Centennial Airport every August. And this concours includes vintage planes, motorcycles, and cars, the best of the best you'll find out of Colorado, sometimes from out of state. But they're able to now they're raising well over $1 million in one night.
Oh, wow. That's wonderful.
And I've personally have been in contact and with families and with their kids. They when health is too much to be around a big crowd, they've held photo shoots at like a little farm, and they're like, "Hey, would you mind bringing some bikes up so we can do name the time, and I'll be right there."
Yeah.
It's this adorkable hobby allows us to go farther than we ever imagined when we were putting the nuts and bolts together to make a difference. And I think, you and I talked about the Distinguished Gentleman's Ride, and I know you and your wife are very intimate with that up in your neck of the woods. And we've been in contact with Revzilla and Revit down in Denver. They've invited us down for their big get together at the setup, and we put up a tent and get our name out there. And again, building community for men's health. I think it's important. We oftentimes we and I know this. I'm guilty of this. Like where you have that passive. I'm fine. I'm doing okay. But deep inside, are you? And it. You have to. There. Where is that conversation that can help pull you out of that? And sometimes it's not always going to be a bike ride that does that, but you need professional help or people that you can talk to those resources that are going to help you with some of those demons that might be having a hard time shaking loose.
Yeah. And that's it. And among many motivators that I have to continue with this podcast, even though I think to myself, I have no idea what the next topic's going to be or who I'm going to interview next or whatever. Sometimes I find myself so lost, but then I'll get an email from someone who confides in me that it's made a difference, that listening to a positive message about something that we both happen to enjoy, that we can find joy from that, and then we realize that we're part of a community as well, then maybe I'm not going to make a bad decision like I was probably going to make before. And I've literally heard that from and that's among many things that keeps me going, on this, because there's real positive energy in this little hobby, sport, whatever you want to call it, that we've fallen into. There's real positive energy there. It takes us. I mean, I feel like I'm preaching to the choir, but it takes us out in the wind. It clears our mind, takes us out into nature. And then we've got this community of other crazy people who do the same thing, and that you could, like at the Distinguished Gentleman's Ride. I use this example all the time. At the DGR, the best example of what that thing's about is that you can go up to a total stranger who's dressed up in a suit like you are, and for the event, give them a big hug and say, "Hello, my name is." Total strangers, because you got that thread of we love motorcycling for one reason or another, and we happen to care about people too. And boom, I mean, what else do you need to have in common besides that?
That's so cool. I mean, what a force that has taken over the world. And in one day, just put on your hat of like how many bikes concurrently were on the road for the same cause, and that number of people that movement has done so much for this world in that way. And it starts with one person, and it catapulted into just an amazing legacy that I hope continues and continues.
Well, it continues because of guys like you, Paul, honestly. I mean, having the heart and getting involved as you described with children's cancer support and things like that. That's just, I can't imagine what these families are going through, and they need all the help they can get. And you're stepping into the gap and making a big difference.
Yeah, it's part of how I was raised, but also there's just something that draws you into that. And I don't like to be alone. I like to be with my people. And I've got multiple tribes, but this is one that I'm very happy with because it's so diverse, and it continues to evolve. And I see the, at least in Colorado, the motorcycling community is very expansive, from adventure riders to the long haulers to the sport bike, the younger crowd that's riding sport bikes, and they're self-organizing right now. And you'll have, I see it on social media, but there's a handful of organizers that are pulling together 100, 200 bikes on a given weekend to drive around the metro, and one person, and it just snowballs, and it's so exciting. This one group, they just ran December 21st, right before some of this cold snap. One more warm day, warm air quotes. It's so good, and it truly tells me that we have a long way to go in this space, and that means there's more work for us to bring these people together and continue to educate and to continue to bridge those gaps, whether it's age or gender. How do we become that group that makes helps everybody in some form or fashion?
Well, this is absolutely a demonstration all around, whether it's the DGR, the different things that you're involved with as well. This is a demonstration of love for your community, love for the world. And there's just too many hurting people out there that need a lot of that. And so we've got to keep after it. We just have to. Yeah. Paul, thank you so much for being on the show. Thanks for reaching out. And, I bash technology a lot, but thank goodness we've got Instagram. We found each other.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a few shiny glimpses. And I mean, look at, we're on Zoom right now, and although we're a handful of miles away, and we're going to correct that. And we're going to go get a cup of coffee at some point.
Absolutely, my friend. Absolutely.
Let's you figure out your work travel situations, and I'll figure out mine, and we'll make it happen. Guaranteed.
That sounds great. Paul, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Rob.
Oh, my thanks again to Paul, and I'm so excited to meet him in person. We're so close, and I can't believe we haven't met yet. But, in a previous episode, I ended with playing the song What a Wonderful World by Louis Armstrong. It is a wonderful world, my friends. It seems pretty dark out there sometimes, but Paul and his team at Colorado Vintage Motorcycle, combining their passion with the support for others, is just one more example. It is a wonderful world. Let's let other people know about that. As always, thank you so much for listening. And if you would like to write a review or rate this podcast, that would be really appreciated. Most folks seem to listen to Apple Podcasts and Spotify, but our review is very much appreciated. It kind of helps us spread the word about this podcast. Until we visit again, my friends, thank you so much for listening. And I wish you peace, and I wish you love.